Honey, so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. Ooh.
All right, welcome to What's Happening Now on KBOKradio.com, and thank you for tuning in. This is your host, Bishop Bowser here speaking to you. We have another great show for you today. Everyone should be listening. So right now, I want you to text or call 7 people and encourage them to tune in to this show. Now, this morning, we're going to have a great one because guess what? You have me as your host. And we're just going to have a discussion here today between us. But I do have a topic that I want to talk about today. And the topic for today is moving from diversity to inclusion and from equality to equity. We're going to talk about that today. Before we get started, I want to just, because this is Black History Month, and so I most definitely, every week I give you a Black inspiration, and but this month I should say is a special month because it is Black History Month. I know that there's a lot of debate about should we have Black history or should we not have Black history, and I don't understand ignorant folks that will say that we don't need a Black History Month. I don't think anything changed from the 1920s up until today from the perspective of Carter G. Woodson started History Month. It really was just something that among blacks where he began to give out, write journals of Black history, because one of the things that Carter G. Woodson saw is that the role of blacks in history was missing or misrepresented, in American history. And so he began to, write history for black folks and so on. And we got to keep that going because nobody is going to get our history right. And like I was always told, when you look at history, it's always his story. So whoever's telling the story, that's the individual that's going to tell it the way he wants to tell it. It's kind of like and they had set up a black college or a black school, and then they had a white teacher come in and start teaching. He started teaching white supremacy. And then one of the students asked him, hey, why are you teaching white supremacy? Why are you teaching this? And he said, well, I wanted you to get another perspective. So we're constantly being indoctrinated, through an oppressed system that wants us to think a certain way, act a certain way, and keep us, just kind of like tell us go sit in that corner over there. But so we have to start for sure educating ourselves, empowering ourselves, and doing for ourselves. One of the ways that this is done is through Black history. So Dr. Carter G. Woodson, he actually was the one that kind of got this going with the Black history. And throughout the years, it began to take root. And now today, we're celebrating a whole month. And we know we don't wait till February to do Black History Month. I mean, to talk about Black history. We talk about it 12 months out of the year, which is every month and all the time. We're having discussions on this and talking about this. But, he chose it, I believe it's the second week, which deals around Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, and Frederick Douglass' birthdays, so to speak. And that's when he started talking about the Black history, Negro history, and then moved to Black History Month. So we most definitely are appreciative and have an old lot to Dr. Carter G. Woodson in dealing with Black history. And we got to keep this going. We can't be listening to ignorant folks that want to talk about taking history out. We don't need it, and so on. These are people that have been whitewashed, including Morgan Freeman, that also said the same thing. And not only that, but not only did he say speak out against Black History Month, but he's an atheist. And I don't care, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but don't down my religion. And so he downs, the belief about God. So I don't have anything to do with anybody that wants to down my God. But for Black inspiration, I want to give you a quote from Carter G. Woodson. This is from The Miseducation of the Negro. And I know by now many of you know that this is one of my favorite books because Carter G. Woodson talks about a lot in reference to the black community. But here's what he says, and I quote, "The problem of holding the Negro down, therefore, is easily solved. You control a man's thinking. You do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him not to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, there is no back door. He will cut one for his special benefit. Education makes it necessary. And that's G. Carter Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. So we have to look at this, and we have to, start thinking it, and who's controlling our thinking, who got us thinking the way that we are thinking. And so that's why I want to talk today about moving from diversity to inclusion and from equality to equity. And also, I just want to acknowledge the Voice in San Diego Voice and Viewpoint, and Chida and Dr. Warren for the award last night that we received, the Good Shepherd's Award. And as one pastor said, and the word says, is that there's only one Good Shepherd, and that's Jesus Christ, who I call Yahshua the Messiah. And we are under shepherds. And so we most definitely recognize that, but we appreciate and are thankful for that acknowledgement last night for the work that we do in the community. So today's topic is moving us from diversity to inclusion and from equality to equity. And but first of all, let us look at diversity and inclusion. I want to look at diversity first. Now, here is a definition of diversity. Diversity has come to refer to the various backgrounds and races that comprise a community, nation, or other grouping. In many cases, the term diversity does not just acknowledge the existence of diversity of background, race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, or so on, but implies an appreciation of these differences. We most definitely want to see the appreciation of all people and backgrounds and ethnic and national and racial backgrounds coming together, and those developing, creating a community, and us all being appreciated for what we bring to the table. We most definitely need more diversity. Now, a lot of times we'll talk and we'll say things like, oh, we got a diverse community. That's because, you have various groups of people living together. But that does not necessarily make a community, and that does not necessarily make diversity unless we are coming together, working together, and appreciating each other. Many times in our community, we don't find that happening. We find the blacks with the blacks. We find the brown with the brown. We find the Asians with the Asians. We find the whites with the whites. The Indians, they live, I shouldn't say Indians, excuse me for saying that, but the Native Americans, they own their reservations, and everybody's separate, and everybody has their own mindset and their own attitude of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish without considering or even thinking about us working together or coming together or being a community, a group of people. So sometimes I think and I believe that we use the word diversity loosely. We use it and not practicing diversity. We got a diverse community, but we're not together. We're not coming together. We don't see ourselves really as a true community, because if you have a community, you have to have a leader. And if you have a leader, you have to have followers. You have to have people coming and gathering together behind that. And we just don't have that in our communities. There's always a division, whether you look at in politics, whether you look at it through race, or whether you look at it through religion, or ideals. There's always a separation and segregation where we are not coming together. We are not working together. We might have some discussion, some talk, and may show up to certain events. Really, we're not a true community. And I would like to see, if we're going to talk about diversity, let's become a true community. Now, there are groups of people that are diverse and have in their organization, they have diversity where they're working together and so on. So don't get me wrong about that. We do have that. As a whole, whether you look at City Heights or whether you look at Southeast San Diego, anywhere in San Diego, any community in San Diego, there is no true diversity from the perspective of coming together as a community. so on. So when we look at that and when we talk about that, in diversity, as the term says, diversity does not just acknowledge the existence of diversity of backgrounds, but it shows appreciation for the differences. So we're not doing that. And I'm not talking about just having a big community celebration here or there. That's a beginning, but that's not really diversity if that's the only time we show appreciation. If that's the only time we have an acknowledgement of it. And so we really got to come together on that when we talk about diversity. But so I want to see us move. I think we do have to get diversity together. We do have to have true diversity in our community. So let us just stop looking at it from the perspective of that, we have people from various walks of life, various backgrounds, and so on. So we're a diverse community. We got to quit looking at it like that, because we're not getting anywhere and we're not going anywhere. And we still have racism. We still have discrimination. We still have prejudices, and we still have segregation. Today is Sunday, and a lot of folks are going to church today. But as I believe was Malcolm X that said, Sunday is the most segregated day, in the week. And that you're talking about. Spiritual people, church folks, whether, you go to your mosque or you go to church or you go to your temple or synagogue or what have you, we're still segregated, whether it's dealing with religion, dealing with race or whatever, we are dealing with those issues and so on. Even in the church, I'm Apostolic Pentecostal. And the history of our church organization, the reason why one of the largest black apostolic organizations is the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, which is the largest black apostolic organization in America. The Pentecostal Assemblies of the World was first a diverse group of pastors. You had white, you had black, and so on, coming together under one organization. But guess what tore it apart? Racism, segregation. The whites wanted to have conventions in the South, and they had segregation back there, and so blacks could not come. So they ended up splitting off, eating black. And you're talking about the church. You're talking about folks who say they love God. So if we can't fix it in the church, how can we fix it in the community? Because when you look on Sunday at church, we're still segregated. In most places, you will find that the blacks with the blacks, the whites with the whites. You'll find some churches where they might have several thousand members, and you might find some blacks going there. And let me just say one thing about that. What I have discovered in the time that I've been in church is that black people will sit under a racial leader. Whether he's black, whether he's white, whether he's Latino, whether he's Asian, just take a look. Blacks will follow them. Blacks will sit under anyone. They're not really racist or discriminatory or prejudiced like other racial groups are, but look at a black pastor. It's rarely that you'll find a black pastor. Sometimes you do, but you find a black pastor where he has a large number of whites or Latinos or Asians following him, and so on. So we do have a serious problem there, and we need to fix that and look at that also. All right? And I believe and we're going to talk about this a little later on, I believe that it's tied into that dominant narrative about black people. And even though people are not racist, many times it's that structural and institutional way of thinking about race and thinking about blacks is implanted in the heart and mind, and people look at it from that perspective, and that's why I'm not going to that black church. And we know when a person comes to church, they want to look for somebody that looks just like them and so on. But if no one is bold enough to take a leap of faith and step in and say, you know what, I like this church, I like this pastor, I like this group of people, and regardless of the racial and cultural differences, we have one thing in common, and that is God. And we seeking God in the Word. And you give me the Word, you give me truth. That's more important than anything else. So we thank God for that. I will say about the church that I pastor, Charity Apostolic Church, we're a small church. We do have a diverse group of people that are going to our church and so on. And so but we got it's got to spread. We have to get past this. And the only way we're going to get past this is to recognize what true diversity is. And when we can get to the place of understanding true diversity, then we can move forward to inclusion, which we're going to do. And so we're going to take a break. Going to come right back after the break, so stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break to continue our discussion. Talk about moving from diversity to inclusion. Let us give you a definition of inclusion. Inclusion, an organization's term's journey to become inclusive begins with a critical but simple inquiry. What actions my organization taking to foster an inclusive culture where uniqueness of beliefs, backgrounds, talents, abilities, and ways of living are welcome and leveraged by learning and informing. Right? A socially inclusive society, organization, or community defined as one where all people feel valued. Differences are respected. Basic needs are met. The whole carries, supports the contribution of all its members. And when you talk about inclusiveness, it also involves being a part of the decision-making process. You know, diversity, we acknowledge and we appreciate our differences, but in inclusion, we are not only are we acknowledging and respecting, but we are people that feel valued. Our differences are respected, and here's the key: basic needs are met. The whole carries and supports contribution of all its members. And so everybody's participating. Everybody's a part of it. And so that's what we're looking for in society today and in our community, not just in organizations, but in our communities. We're looking for inclusion and so on. So that I gave you that. So let's move on to equality. What is equality? Equality is achieved by providing for the whole to provide for any one group or person. But let me just say this about equality. One of the things that we can get wrong with equality is the same thing as diversity, because we would think that diversity, like we said, just because, you know, you have a diverse group of people in the community, and so we say, oh, we have a diverse community. But if we're not together as a community, working as a community, it's not diverse. So the same thing with equality. You know, if you split a pie and say we're going to spread jobs throughout San Diego and throughout the races, you know, let me just, you know, give you an example. You know, we're going to give 10 jobs to whites, 10 jobs to Asians, 10 jobs to Latinos, 10 jobs to blacks, 10 jobs to Americans, and 10 jobs to the other different racial backgrounds and groups. And so, because we equality, we want to give everybody 10 jobs. But if whites are doing way better than blacks jobs, if 95 to 100% of whites already have jobs, or let's say 95% already have jobs, and if only 20 to 30 to 40% of blacks have jobs, and you bring 10 jobs to each group, you might say that's equality because you spread it at that number and you evenly gave everyone 10, you know, the same. Everybody got the same of the whole. But does not really help uplift. 10 jobs are not going to help uplift black people. Only 40% of black folks have jobs, where you have 95% of white folks have jobs, and you give each group 10 more jobs. It's not going to really help uplift black people. It's not going to even bring them up to the same level of white. But a lot of times that's where we get fooled, and a lot of times that's where a lot of political games are played when we talk about equality. Oh, equality, we treating everybody the same. And as talk about in San Diego, you know, one San Diego. What does that really mean when you talk about one San Diego and you bringing everybody together and so on? Because we're most definitely not together, and we're most definitely not sharing all a piece of the pie in a good way that's going to benefit and uplift all races. And I'm not, you know, not just blacks, but the reason why I talk about blacks and point black people out so much is because look at blacks, we're lagging behind mostly almost all the racial groups, you know, and whatever area you look at, you'll find that blacks are suffering the most. You know, when you talk about unemployment, blacks are lagging behind all the other races. There's a higher percentage of blacks that's unemployed. You know, I believe in California it was about 11 to 12%. blacks were without jobs. When you look at the prison population based on per capita or percentages of the racial groups, blacks overwhelmingly are misrepresented and overrepresented, I should say, in the prison system, where you have 40% of blacks that are locked up and in prison, and it goes in line with what I talked about before when you talk about police stops. You have black, you have Latinos, and you have whites. They're like 32% per 1,000 people. But when you look at blacks, it's 116 per 1,000 people that are stopped by the police. And so we're just on the bottom of the total and oppressed and mistreated more than anyone else. And when you see that, we have to speak out. We have to point it out, and we have to let people see and understand and know that, hey, there's some injustice here, and we need to straighten this out, and we need to fix this. But because until you uplift blacks, you're not going to be able to lift up everyone else. And because we're lagging so far behind, that we have unique needs, and the systems and the structural systems and institutional systems, and even in the community and our educational system and so on, we have to start looking at fixing these problems among blacks and other people of color. A lot of times I think we get in trouble. We start, when we start blending and mixing everything, when we start talking about, as we go back to diversity, when we start talking about, whites and brown and black and age and all these different racial groups, and we try to blend them in, and we say people of color, or we say poor people and so on. But for the most part, talk about poor people, even poor people, when you have whites and brown poor people, blacks are doing way worse than the other poor folks. So there's a problem there, and that means that there is I don't want to say conspiracy, but there is a structure that is set up specifically against black people. Until we look at that and fix that and deal with that, black folks are not going to be never uplifted, and we're not going to never in San Diego have a one San Diego, where we're meeting the needs of everyone. And the only way that's going to happen is that the mayor of the city of San Diego, if we want to talk about this equality, the mayor in San Diego cannot just meet with a few people. He has to meet with and I'm talking about blacks, has to meet with the whole community, the black community. Call on the mayor to not only just have your private meetings with some of our leaders, which is fine. Do that if that's what you need to do, because they are leading people, and they do have organizations and groups that they're leading, and you do need to get their perspective and so on. But you also must take it to the next level and come into the community and meet with black people. And what I'm talking about is we need to have some town hall meetings. We need to have some forums or some listening tours with the mayor, where he come and listen to black folks and hear our stories and feel our pain. Then he can kind of get, hopefully, a little idea of an understanding of what's going on in the black community. You're not going to get that just by meeting with a few folks, but you will get that if you really come and listen to the community as a whole. There's a lot of people out here that are hurting, a lot of people out here that are left out, and you need to hear their stories, and then we can come together as a community as a whole and figure out how we're going to fix this. We're going to fix these problems. And so if it's one San Diego, let us treat it like it's one San Diego, and let's start doing some things. But you got to understand these things. You got to speak out and address and speak out against these inequalities that we have in our community. All right?